Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. Class is in session. Wow, I can't even talk on this Monday morning. Class is in session for another episode of Mock It Like It's Hot, presented to you by Club Fantasy FFL. My name is Evan. Of course, with me, as usual, is my co-host, Ryan. Ryan, good morning to you. Happy Monday. How are you? How's it going, man?
Fantastic, Evan. Glad to be here. Glad to jump back into some full Dynasty drafts instead of just the rookies. While I love doing the rookie drafts, I prefer bigger drafts that don't take a half an hour and talk about the same 15 guys for a month straight. So I'm pretty excited for this. Couldn't be more excited for our guest. Over the last probably 6 months, I've done so many shows with Britt. So I know she's a great guest. I know it's going to be a great show. So I'm excited.
Of course, welcome to the show, Britt. How's it going? Good morning to you.
Thanks for having me. It's been Monday, different little camera setup, might be a little wobbly during the draft, but we're going to make it work. It's going to be great.
You know what? It can't be a Monday without a little bit of a technical difficulty here and there during a live broadcast, but that's okay.
Exactly. I want to give people a behind the scenes. Britt is so dedicated that her computer dies on her and she is doing this from her phone. So she is drafting and broadcasting from her phone, and you morons can't even join the draft and play nice with us. So
she's got an epic bag. She's got an epic backdrop too. She's got a Prince picture right on her wall. She's got books in the background. I love it. So it's awesome.
There's a Traylon Burks signed ball, but I think it's directly in the center, so you can't.
All right, there you go.
I'll have to reposition it later, but
there we
all
go.
Good. All right, Ryan, the class is in session. Please tell us about our draft today.
Well, before we do, I'm going to give them again behind the scenes work. Britt, are you able to join the draft? I'm only showing 5 in there right now, so we're about to hit close start. I don't want to leave you out. I mean, otherwise we can just talk about the draft, so it's all good. But
I think I'm in. I just need to claim.
Okay, yeah, just take a spot. Yep. There she is. Okay, so we are, like I said, going back to a SuperFlex startup draft. So we've been doing these rookie drafts for so long, and the rookie drafts are great, but we have not done a startup since we've known the landing spots. And one of the big things to pay attention to are where these rookies end up in these kind of drafts. Because as I've talked about, ADP is what you're trying to learn with these mock drafts. You want to know when you need to draft to get your guy. Britt already dropped a name that I'm sure we're going to talk about later in the show, Traylon Burks. Britt needs to know in her startup drafts this season, where's Traylon Burks going to fall? And that's why you do these kind of mock drafts. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We have 6 drafters with us today, 4 auto drafts, but when you're doing mocks, auto drafts are fine because they're going to pull directly from ADP, best player available. I'm not overly concerned about that. The main thing here is learning how Britt approaches a draft and just kind of seeing what we can do better and how we can have a perfect draft later on. So I'm going to click start draft.
Well, let's get it started.
No, hold on one second. I'm also going to make sure I have sound off because that was really annoying last time. So we're good. So we're going to click start draft, and then I'm going to bring the draft up here on the screen. Britt is sideways with us today, but that's okay because she's just going to be a little box over on the side of the screen. So it is a super flex draft, and we talked about this earlier. We are going to see a heavy uptick on where quarterbacks are drafted.
And as the draft is going live, make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Club Fantasy FFL. First question I have to ask you guys, and Britt, I'll go to you. When it comes to rookies, especially in a dynasty draft, where can you see the first rookie actually fall when it comes to draft position?
I'm thinking around that 5th and 6th round range, depending on how high you have them ranked. I've seen some in the underdog best ball drafts go pretty high. And since it is dynasty and they do have value down the road, I can definitely see them going higher than they would in, say, like a redraft league or something like that.
Okay. And which rookie are you really kind of seeing coming off the board first? Is it more the Breece Halls of the world? Who are we seeing really kind of jumping off the board for rookies in dynasty drafts this year?
I've definitely seen a lot of Breece Hall early. James Cook is going a lot higher than you would think. After we got his landing spot, he kind of just shot up draft boards, and I don't necessarily.
Oh, she cut off there just for a second.
I say, yeah, we lost Britt for a second, but that's okay.
It's quite all right.
I did want to hit on what she brought up about with James Cook. We had done the rookie mock draft last week, and someone brought up they saw James Cook go with the 3rd overall pick of a rookie mock. That's a little insane to me. I understand he was the 3rd running back taken, but wide receivers, we really have to understand wide receivers in Dynasty have way more value than your typical running back. Running backs just don't have the shelf life, which hurts their value in Dynasty. And that's something you want to be very, very careful with, is getting so caught up on a team need In Dynasty, team need does matter, but building the best team possible, especially around trade value, is far, far more important. So,
speaking of trades, so I was on a boat on Saturday, and all of a sudden I got this text from one of the guys in our Dynasty league, which I mentioned before, it used to be a redraft, now it's Dynasty, and he's already talking to me about picks and trading out and trading. I'm like, dude, I'm on a boat, bro. You're catching me at a vulnerable position right now because I've been drinking beer. It's hot. I can't think straight. I was like, don't talk. He's like, well, we should switch draft positions. I was like, well, I have the first. I was like, man, I don't know if I want to. It's like, just can you get back at me later when I'm more level headed about doing picks, because he's trying to do all these elaborate things where I'll trade you the first and you can have my second. I was like, dude, just chill out.
It's actually a really good point, because obviously he caught you in a bad situation.
He did.
But it is something I wanted to talk about, where when you're mock drafting, very rarely, and I don't know that really anywhere allows trading during mock drafting. Oh, Britt's back with us. I don't know that anywhere. Oh, you're fine.
I guess I timed out because I had been staring at the sleeper for a second. And little things that you learn.
Exactly, that we didn't even know was a thing. So
yeah.
But you can't really trade spots in a mock draft, and that is such a big part of Dynasty startup drafts, and it's something you'll start to see actually right around this pick. You'll see it a little bit earlier, but right around these third round picks are when people start to see their guy fall and they just have this itch and they have to come up and get him. And that is one of the hardest things, even for me, someone who plays a lot of Dynasty, but I'm as far from a Dynasty expert as I would say anyone is. But for someone like me who plays a lot of Dynasty, even I'm not 100% sure how to value 2 years from now's picks versus what I could get later. It's such a weird dynamic, and it's such a hard thing to navigate.
Britt, I like your draft strategy so far. You got Kyler Murray as your first pick, and then Najee Harris. Tell me a little bit about the Jalen Hurts pick. I know Jalen Hurts, it was a stud last year in fantasy, not so much on the field in real life. But Jalen Hurts, do you expect the same kind of production, or if not better, now that he has a number one wide receiver in A.J. Brown this year?
Yeah, I mean, he can only go up from last year, right? They had one of the lowest passing volume, or the lowest passing volume in the league. What saved Hurts was his rushing upside. I don't think that goes away, but then you have a few more weapons down the field for him to kind of, have options with. And it can only help him.
Okay, gotcha. If you could kind of give me a couple of breakout stars this year that a lot of people should maybe target in drafts, or actually give me some booms or busts when it comes to players that are on new teams with new systems this year when it comes to drafting them. Can you give me a couple of those?
Oh, yeah. Give me 1 second.
Oh, yeah, you're on your
She's
pick.
making her pick.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, I'll go to you.
It's difficult on the phone.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're doing a lot right now, and we appreciate the work you're putting in.
At least we know she can multitask. That's a good thing, though.
I think the most interesting, and I don't know so much that I want to say it is boom or bust, but looking at last year's rookie quarterbacks, there's my girl taking Traylon Burks in the 4th round. But looking at last year's rookie quarterbacks, and I want to definitely give Britt her chance to talk about her guy, but Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, all immensely disappointing rookie seasons. There's no other way to put it. Lance didn't even win the job. Fields was battling back and forth with Dalton, but that could have been a coaching issue. Zach Wilson never saw an interception he didn't want to throw, and Trevor Lawrence just looked bad. In a dynasty startup, young quarterbacks are supposed to be the bread and butter, and second-year starting quarterbacks should almost all be going in the first 24 to 36 picks. We're not seeing that at all this year, and it's very interesting to see, are they going to rebound greatly in their second year and make everybody who gets to draft them in the 3rd and 4th round look really, really smart, or were they as bad as they looked on paper?
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that everyone's pretty gun shy, especially, you had Lawrence throwing more interceptions than he did touchdowns. Of course, he has a new coach this year. I don't think everybody should be quite as gun shy with him. Zach Wilson remains to be seen. That AFC East division is super, super tough. Justin Fields, I don't know if the Bears really did anything to improve the weapons around him or his line. So I'm kind of out on Justin Fields. He's one of my dudes that I'm just not not going to take. But yeah, it's going to be interesting if these guys and get out of this narrative of them just being bad. You know what I mean?
I love one thing you said though is like, so Justin Fields, you said is a guy you're just not going to take. And I'm guessing we're talking more redraft because I don't know that there's a lot of hope for Justin Fields in redraft, but at some point in Dynasty as a 23-year-old starting quarterback, he has value. It's just such a weird thing right now to decide where that value lies.
Is there any hope for the Bears at all? Probably not at all.
Yeah.
Certainly not in 2023 or 2022. People are legitimately talking about, and this is a horrible thing to say, a step back in this first year under their new head coach. And
how many more step backs can you go? Ryan, I don't want to call you out, but I'm on a CBS Sports website.
I am.
Your name is mentioned.
Yes.
Nice little shout out to you.
Yes, I got luckily invited to do a SuperFlex mock draft. That's probably my inspiration for wanting to do this week. A SuperFlex mock draft with Heath Cummings invited us. We're going to have him on the No Pun Intended show in a few weeks. And so Faith and I got to get in there with some of the big wigs at CBS and do a SuperFlex mock draft. And that was part of my inspiration for wanting to draft from the end today was I saw Chris Towers, one of the editors over at CBS, do very, very well from the end. And I wanted to see if I could replicate. And I'm going to tell you right now that I'm failing miserably in that endeavor. So
explain to me your Dak Prescott pick.
So SuperFlex round 1 is always going to be a quarterback for me.
Right.
I want to commend everybody on this round 1. This is about what you should see a round 1 in a SuperFlex look like. 8 quarterbacks, 2 of the best young wide receivers in football. When it got to my pick, I want youth and I want a solid quarterback. Hurts was on the books for me, so what a great pick by Britt in the 3rd round. It was down to Hurts or Prescott for me as the last guys who I wanted. Should I have taken 2 quarterbacks and had both of those guys? Absolutely. But Jonathan Taylor was just too tasty for me on the end, knowing that I'm not picking again for another 20 picks. So why not get my guy there as well? But basically, like when you look at who was left, Stafford, Hurts, Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady are like the guys you want as a starting quarterback anywhere, especially in Superflex. Stafford, Brady, just a little bit too old for me, and I trusted Prescott more than Hurts and Wilson. So that is the Dak Prescott pick. Plus, I love that offense. I think he's going to be throwing a ton.
I was going to say, let me clarify the question. Why Dak Prescott? Why? No, just kidding.
Oh, yeah.
He can only go up after
I was gonna say,
last year.
Britt could tell you how great. Britt was begging Dallas to draft Traylon Burks so that she could have had the match made in perfection. But no, I think Prescott's a solid quarterback. I'll be honest, I just traded him away in one dynasty for a Patrick Mahomes upgrade, but part of that is Patrick Mahomes being 2 years younger. But I think they have a solid wide receiving core, and then they have a declining running back group where they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. So I'm all for Dak Prescott.
The auto draft team 1 picked Tua. I don't know if you guys saw the videos of Tua throwing to Tyreek Hill over the weekend where he was kind of the underthrows of Tyreek. Are you kind of buying that video, or obviously they're in practice, you know, they're just kind of getting the feel for each other. Are you kind of buying that video where Tua may not be able to get the ball to Tyreek, or is this just, you know, hey, we're practicing, we're just kind of feeling each other out right now?
I'll let Britt go first.
Yeah. I think it's just a practice situation. They've only been throwing together for, you know, maybe a month and a half. A lot of has been made about Tua's arm and whatever, but last year he was the most accurate of all the quarterbacks on throws of 40 yards or more. So when he does, it's a weird stat because people are like, he can't throw the ball, but when he does, he's really good. So I think that it's just a little bit of some growing pains and everybody just needs to chill. It's like training camp.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna give you guys 2 names. Who has the better season, Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill?
That one's tough. Yeah, I'm gonna say Devontae Adams, but
I actually have it Devontae as well. I think there's already a chemistry between Adams and
It works well because they played with each other in college, so that
exactly. And so Tyreek and Tua still have to figure each other out. And I love Hunter Renfrow. I'm a Hunter Renfrow guy through and through, but Jalen Waddle is a lot tougher competition for targets than Hunter Renfrow. So I feel like Adams should see a larger target share than Tyreek as well.
Okay.
And Mike McDaniel has just added a complete stable of running backs in Miami. It's like every running back that he can get, he's picking up. So
it's kind of like he took a page from another offense that he was, working.
Which one was that?
Something in the West Coast, I think. Something in San
something
Francisco.
like
Yeah.
I just want to throw out that our girl Kelly in Phoenix completely agrees with us. It's Adam 100%. So
I love it.
Kelly knows what she's talking about.
Britt, are there any players that come to mind that were studs last year that maybe many draftees or drafters should maybe stay away from in this coming season?
Oh,
That's a loaded question, I know.
Yeah, it kind of is. I haven't really thought about it that much. I mean, really, if y'all followed all the Twitter, whatever that happened this weekend, I'm kind of out on Mahomes. I think that he's going to have too tough of a schedule, and then he lost Tyreek Hill. He finished outside the top 12 6 games last season, so it's not really unfeasible to think that he could finish outside 8 or more times this year. So yeah, we'll see. I guess I'm saving receipts for everyone on Twitter.
You know what? I would agree with that, because looking at the offense now, you lost your number one. Really, who's going to replace him?
Well, I think the stat she hit on is something I've actually been talking about in regards to wide receivers a lot. How many times they finish out of the top of their position, because Tyreek Hill was guilty of that as well. I was railing against Tyreek Hill last year, not because he's not a great player, not because he wasn't going to be top 5, top 10 at the position, because on a weekly basis, it's a coin toss whether or not he is finishing as a wide receiver 1, and he was costing you such high draft stock. And that's exactly what you're looking at Patrick Mahomes. I'm looking at this more from a redraft basis than Dynasty. I still want Mahomes in Dynasty. I believe in Andy Reid. I believe in Mahomes, but this could be a down year for him. But in redraft, Mahomes is a guy who's going to cost you, if your league is drafting like they have in previous years, a 3rd or a 4th round pick. 1, you should never be drafting a quarterback that high to begin with. And 2, if you're doing it this year, it probably shouldn't be Patrick Mahomes. Britt is absolutely right.
Yeah, just the retooling of the offense, you don't really have a clear-cut number one, which your number one now is Kelsey. And their backfield
ones in the league.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That's very true. They don't really have a clear-cut number one back in the backfield, too. I know they just signed Rojo in the offseason, too, as well. But, with that, backfield is kind of a question mark. And then, Mecole Hardman can be your number one, but that's
the thing too. They didn't only lose Tyreek Hill; they lost Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson, who were the guys who stepped up in Hill's absence. It wasn't Hardman; it was Pringle and Robinson. Right. So now you've got Juju, who only had his good rookie season when AB was being double teamed down the field. You got MVS, who's jury's still out on that, and then they're going to have to learn this offense. And I feel like the offense is pretty complicated in Andy Reid's pass-heavy system. So it remains to be seen. I don't think that the quantity is necessarily going to equate to the same quality that we had.
I think we're definitely going to see a power shift in that division alone, because now every team in that division is so good now with the moves they've made in the offseason so far. It's going to be that division, I think, is going to be fun to watch. I'm going
to throw this out. I've been asking all of my football friends this. Do we think the entire AFC West makes the playoffs?
You know what? The crazier things have happened. So I
think, like, if you look at the AFC South, the division winners in, and whoever finishes second is probably not. When you look at the AFC East, you're probably looking at a very similar situation. The AFC North is the one that complicates matters, because you had the Bengals in the Super Bowl last year. Baltimore seems to always be good and make a run at the playoffs. And even the Browns, if you believe Deshaun Watson and if he's going to play enough games, the only team who's really probably out of it in that division is Pittsburgh. So it's not easy for the AFC West, but my goodness, I don't know that there's a team in there I want to pick against.
I think they're just going to beat the hell out of each other.
And so that's interesting as well, because that's something else I was talking about, is the teams who aren't getting beat up on, those, the Indianapolis Colts of the world, arguably the Buffalo Bills of the world, the teams who aren't getting beat up on every single week, are they going to go into the playoffs way fresher and maybe even then earning that bye? And that's going to change. That could change the dynamic of the AFC completely. The fact that 6 of the AFC West games are the hardest damn games they're going to play.
Yep.
All right,
Exactly.
Give me a way too early prediction for that division. Rank them. Who's going to be first, second, third, fourth? Way too early.
I'll go first. I was going to let you think, Britt. I am all in on the Los Angeles Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers are my early Super Bowl pick this year.
My man.
I am going to go Chargers. I am not as down on the Chiefs as others. So I'm going to go Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos, Raiders.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got Chargers, Broncos, Raiders, and actually Chiefs at the very bottom. I know that's a very divisive opinion to have, but I just think they've got some stuff to figure out. And all these other teams did a lot more in the offseason and in free agency than the Chiefs did. And I think that they took the bigger leap overall. So we'll see how it goes.
The thing is, you can put them at the fourth place team, but like they'll be still a good fourth place team. They won't
right,
be
like a 10-5.
Right, they won't be a below 500 fourth place team.
Or 10-7, whatever.
Right, that's how good that division is. That's the funny thing. So
yeah.
Any picks so far in this draft that has really stand out to you both right now? Any kind of off the wall picks, or kind of like, ooh, that was a great pick so far?
Actually, a lot of mine just recently happened, and I want to kind of get Britt's opinion on these because there's one player specifically, I'm going to save him for last, that I'm just shocked at how late he keeps going. But I'm noticing Rashad Bateman, who is in a very good position to be a wide receiver one this season, and then Juju Smith-Schuster, who is 25 years old and in that same situation. And Britt, I know you're down on Kansas City, but still, to get Bateman in the 9th, Juju in the 11th, and then the third one I want to throw out, and you can kind of just talk about these guys together. I don't understand the hate that is with Mike Williams right now. I understand he just got the contract last year, 27 years old, playing with one of the best young quarterbacks in football. Yet he fell to the 11th too here. He's falling into double-digit rounds in every Dynasty startup mock I'm doing. I feel like Mike Williams is getting very much disrespected after one of the best seasons of his career last year. So Bateman, Juju, and Mike Williams, just looking at wide receiver, I'm shocked at their age, their role on their team, and how far they're falling.
Yeah, and Williams got that big contract too, so it's not like he's going anywhere. He was one of the highest scoring receivers through week 6 last season. Then he got hurt, and that kind of took his stats down for the rest of the year. But he wasn't bad, and he was still getting looks, and he's still on this high-powered offense, and he's built a rapport with Justin Herbert and all these extra reasons. Like, there's no reason he should be falling.
Keenan Allen's not getting any younger either, so
exactly
right. And Keenan Allen's had his back issues, his own injury issues, and things like that. So I don't know. I think if you can grab him at that ADP, you absolutely should.
I mean, that's a steal if you can grab him that late.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah, and that's the one that I think is really throwing me off. I'm going to go ahead and scroll us down here and kind of delete the first 3 rounds of the draft. We'll go back to those later so we can get some more of these picks in here. But yeah, and then like Rashad Bateman's one that's me extremely strange because there should be a lot of love for Rashad Bateman right now, and there is in some circles. He obviously wasn't great as a rookie, but came on relatively solidly at the end of the season. I think he's 22 years old. He was a fan favorite going into drafts last year, but then we were all very upset when he ended up in Baltimore. But now Marquise is gone. That's his show, him and Mark Andrews. So
Ryan, going back with him, could you think it's because of the way their offense is normally set up? Because they're not really a pass-heavy team. They're more reliant on the run, especially with their quarterback in Lamar Jackson. I mean, they're a run-heavy team. Is it because maybe that really Baltimore really hasn't had a clear number one for him to throw to, and that's why a lot of people are like maybe kind of gun-shy to draft Bateman?
It's fair, but what I will say is the wide receiver one tends to do well in that offense. Marquise Brown 3 years ago had 71 targets as a rookie. He was at 100 targets last year, or 2 years ago, and 145 targets last year. Not a wide receiver in a non-pass heavy offense can be scary, but this is an offense that will favor and pepper its wide receiver one, and that is enough to get me right back on board.
I think this. I hope for Baltimore fans that the way their offense is going to be set up this year is a little bit different from past offenses too, because with the way their run game is set up right now is you don't really know who's going to be the lead back. So it's going to be like a running back by committee. Depends on J.K. Dobbins. I mean, if he's going to be 100% going into game 1, then you're good to go. But I'm always pulling for the number one wide receivers in Baltimore because they've got an explosive offense when they can be explosive. Other than that, I mean, when Lamar is just running for his life, which he normally is, it's like, man, I wish I wouldn't have taken a Baltimore wide receiver so early in my draft or so middle of my draft. That's why I'm always gun shy about Baltimore. I love them. I love Baltimore. They're a great team, but it's just when it comes to fantasy, it's like, Mark
But
Andrews.
the Ravens did a lot in the draft to kind of shore up that O-line too. So we'll see how much improvement that. Yeah.
And then their defense as well, which is going to give them the ability to play a little bit more aggressive on offense because their defense had so many issues at corner last year. They were constantly having to make up for that kind of deficit, if you will. So,
I mean, that vision is really kind of up for grabs. Really, to me, I don't think Cincinnati's going to be as good as they were last year. I think they'll take a step back. Is that Super Bowl hangover curse? But with the teams that are out right now, I mean, Pittsburgh is like a huge question mark. I mean, Trubisky and quarterback, really? I mean, come on. And then what you got going on in Cleveland with the unknown about Deshaun Watson, if he's going to be suspended or not. If he is, who's going to be taking over the offense until he comes back? It's just like the question marks alone. Like, to me, Baltimore seems almost like the division to lose if it's up for grabs, to be honest with you.
I won't go that far. I'm a big Cincinnati guy, and Cleveland is interesting to me. We've talked about this briefly on the show. Me as a moral human being is still just anti-Deshaun Watson, but me as a football analyst, the Browns are a better team with Deshaun Watson than they were with Baker Mayfield. The Browns defense underachieved last year, and when I see that, like them and specifically them and the Washington Commanders, who I think were ready to rock and step back, I think they're going to have huge years this year. That alone is going to keep the Browns, I think, near the top of that division, even if it's Jacoby Brissett playing quarterback.
Do you think Watson will get suspended? Because we were talking about this on my boating trip this weekend, where we haven't really heard anything about any kind of suspension at all. Do you think that might not even happen with him?
Britt, I'll let you weigh in.
Yeah, I think I saw over the weekend that the Browns and Watson were set to be deposed by the NFL. So we'll have to wait and see kind of what comes out of that. But normally in this situation, I would think that if it's gone this far without a suspension, that it's probably not going to happen.
Right.
That's fair. I'm going to throw one thing out. A buddy of mine, huge Bengals fan, pointed out that the Browns and Bengals play each other on Monday Night Football week 8. So if he does get suspended, it will be 6 or fewer weeks.
Games. Yeah. I can agree.
I was thinking it's 6.
Yep. In my projections right now, I have him as a 6-game suspension as well. So.
Yeah, I think we were all saying like 6 would be kind of like the max for him. But I think it's just kind of right now, we haven't heard anything about rumblings about, hey, a suspension is coming down for him, because by now you would have heard something because of all of what's going on. Like the NFL would have said, okay, 6 games, boom, and then we all know how to really prepare for this. So I'm really surprised that he hasn't been suspended yet. So we shall see as the season
one thing
closer.
I wanted to throw out, I had this draft stopped at 15 rounds just because we want to have time to talk, and we finished the show at right about an hour. In a typical dynasty draft, it would be far more than 15 rounds. You're typically dealing with 20 to 25 rounds. So just if you're new to dynasty, expect that. So
yeah, they're a lot longer and more in depth.
Well, there's so many players who did not get drafted right now. I'll just throw out names that I had on my queue for later draft picks. John Mechie, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, McCole Hardman, who did not even get drafted in this, that in a dynasty league, they are on a roster somewhere. So
Britt, a little bit about the show is we kind of like really like to educate the novice players that are doing fantasy, the ones that haven't really done it before. They're kind of dropping into their first year as a fantasy football player. If you're coming into a dynasty league, what is really your main strategy going into your draft? What are your tips? Hey, these are the guys I should be targeting. This is how I should draft my team going into my first dynasty draft overall.
Well, I'm sort of a novice to dynasty as well. So these are just things that I've learned over the past few startups that I've done. Youth, obviously, you're going to try to be holding on to these players for a long time. You don't necessarily want the Tom Brady's or the Aaron Rodgers or the people who are going to be out of the league in a couple of years. Also look at talent versus opportunity and where you think this is going to go down the line. And make sure to know your league scoring. Like, is it SuperFlex? Is it whatever? Because if you don't set up, like in the SuperFlex draft, for example, don't get your quarterback set up, nobody's giving them away. Like, you're going to have to pay an arm and a leg to get the right quarterback to make you a contender in a SuperFlex league. So just be very aware of that and know that they're going to fly off the board.
Awesome. Okay, are we finalized with the draft? We good to go?
Yeah, the draft is done.
Okay, Britt, kind of tell me, go through your team, kind of go through your board, kind of how your strategy was going into your drafting your team this mock draft.
Oh, let's see if I can see it on this tiny this tiny screen. Kyler Murray, I chose him over Joe Burrow, who was sitting there at this point in the draft, just because of the rushing upside. I think that he is going to do well on the ground. His points per game last season before he got hurt they were pretty great. If you look at Joe Burrow, who's going ahead of him, he really only scored higher in those last 3 weeks, and that inflated his average points per game and his overall end of season rating. So I actually like Kyler over him. Najee, young stud quarterback or stud running back. Jalen Hurts, kind of same thing with the rushing upside as Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Then I had to get Treylon Burks because if you know me and if you followed anything about it, I have to grab him wherever I can. He's young in this offense. He's going to be most likely the wide receiver 1. He's going to be used in, we've said this ad nauseum, but maybe the Deebo Samuel role where he's coming out of the backfield. So I really like his upside there. ETN was a little iffy, just because we didn't see what he got to do last season, but I think under Doug Peterson, he's going to really produce this season. Jerry Jeudy, kind of the same thing. We haven't seen him produce, but now with Russell Wilson, he has that opportunity. Devontae Smith, another young receiver to pair with Hurts and kind of get that stack. Then I've got Dalton Schultz, who we saw take a step forward now with no Amari Cooper, no Cedric Wilson. He can really be a focal point of this offense down the road. James Cook, another guy who had a good landing spot, really talented player.
There's such value with where you got him. The 9th round for a rookie, 2nd round running back. We've said this before. 2nd round is the new 1st round for fantasy running backs, because no running backs are really getting taken in the 1st round. So the 9th round, what value?
Tell you what, I love
absolutely.
I love the Renfro.
I was like, how is he still here?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah,
so please keep going. I just wanted to throw that out there. It caught me by surprise.
I appreciate it. Then we've got Renfro. Even with the addition of Adams, I think, especially like in a PPR setting, his target share is going to diminish a little bit, but he's still going to be the primary slot guy. Gabe Davis has, especially after last season, has really come on. Now there's no Emmanuel Sanders, no Cole Beasley. I know that they added Crowder, but Gabe Davis is going to be that field stretcher. And then I don't know who's underneath. I think Rashad White.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say.
Scroll down just a tad.
Yep. There we go. So, yeah, you have Rashad White, Trey McBride, Jameis Winston, and Jalen Tolbert.
Yeah. So White, Fournette is getting older. Rashad White was a dual threat pass catching back. So I think he's going to do really well in this offense. Trey McBride, another possible dart throw at this point in the draft to stack with Kyler Murray. Zach Ertz is very, very up in years. Jameis Winston at this point in the draft, I think that adding all the weapons with Jarvis Landry, with Olave, that he's going to have.
Drew Brees might come back. He's not coming back to broadcast. So
all the memes with Jameis Winston, like looking over his shoulder and whatever. But yeah, let's just say Brees doesn't. I think Winston, especially at this point in the draft, is a really big value. And then I had to do my Cowboys pick with Jalen Tolbert.
Great pick.
Again, we don't know when Michael Gallup's going to be back from that ACL since he only had surgery in February. Losing Cooper, losing other pass-catching weapons, I think he's going to have an impact sooner rather than later on that team.
Awesome. Ryan, can you highlight Kelly's draft? She's been talking so much like I'm the winner of this in the comments.
Yeah, Kelly needs to know what's going on because Kelly got picked on in the first couple episodes of the show, and now she has a complex where she has to win every week.
Yes. So let's go over her roster real quick.
Yes.
Starting off with Lamar I like it. I mean, she's got the combo of Lamar and Mark
Great
Andrews.
Stack. Yeah.
Yep, and then Chubb and Adam. I mean, I'm not hating it so far.
Well, her team highlights, I think,
Win now.
Well, win now for sure. I mean, I love everything about her team.
Yeah.
When you look at Chubb and then getting James Conner, a top 5 running back, all the way down in the 9th round. But one of the things her team did, and she calls this out in her own chat, she double stacked 2 of the best tight ends in football with their quarterbacks in a super flex league. Now, are you going to be able to flex Waller every week? Probably. Especially, I mean, like, we're starting 3 wide receivers and she has 3 great wide receivers. We're starting 2 running backs. She has 2 great running backs. And so she can throw Waller into one of her flex spots every week and then have just this massive double stack going. So it was great team construction. It's definitely in running to win a championship in year 1. Year 3 might be a little rough. We don't even know if Lamar Jackson's a Baltimore Raven next year. So.
Ryan, if you want to go through your draft takeaways, and I know you put this in the rundown. I like this new segment, the oops of the draft.
And so early on, I'm a very transparent human being. Early on, we were picking the worst team in the league, and honestly, it didn't feel. It felt mean-spirited, and no matter how I tried to present it as a learning moment, it wasn't good. However, finding single mistakes makes a lot of sense, and a few of them jumped out to me. Number one, us, and this is more about the rest of the league than like this week's episode is more about the rest of the league than the person who made the mistake, because I don't really see any huge mistakes. Letting Darren Waller fall to the 6th round. I understand being scared of Devontae Adams, but elite tight ends in Dynasty should not fall that far. Kyle Pitts went in the 2nd round. Mark Andrews went in the 2nd round. Travis Kelce and George Kittle went in the 4th. And then Waller, who should be considered with those guys, fell 2 full rounds later. That's something we need to take a look at just in fantasy. You should be drafting these guys a lot higher. And I made that mistake. I went Deontay Johnson and Michael Pittman instead of grabbing Waller, and then had to grab Freiermuth on the next round all the way back around. But the names I want to highlight here are wide receivers that we let fall too far. I've already talked about some of them. Rashad Bateman, Michael Thomas, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mike Williams, and one that I completely missed. And he fell. Where did he go? Sorry. I think it's Brandon Cooks, wherever he is, right here. 12th round. Brandon Cooks is a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football who is 28 years old and going in the 12th round. Obviously, we don't love the Davis Mills situation at quarterback, but I don't think Davis Mills. I was going to say he's not bad by any stretch, and he's going to throw to Brandon Cooks. We need to pay more attention. Sub 30-year-old wide receivers who are the wide receiver 1 on their team, let alone Rashad Bateman, who's 22, should be going higher in these drafts. Wide receivers have more staying power. I understand there's incentive to win now, but look what Kelly did getting James Conner in the 9th round. Get those wide receivers who are going to last you 3 and 4 years first. Worry about running back later. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of bring up is just how we are handling rookie running backs in regard to Britt getting James Cook. James Cook, Ken Walker, and Breece Hall all went in the 2nd round. Breece Hall was a 2nd round pick in this draft. Ken Walker was a 6th round pick. James Cook fell all the way to the 9th. Are we overvaluing? Or are we undervaluing? And in James Cook's status, I think we undervalued. You want youth at running back. Running backs are their most useful in the first 3 to 4 years of their career. That's where you so after you've gotten your wide receivers in the first 4 to 5 rounds, James Cook should probably be like a 6th round pick at that point. And those are just kind of the things where it's learning ADP. It's learning where to value these rookies and where you should add them to your team. The back end of your draft is more about depth and hopefully trade pieces later. The front end needs to be about the next 3 to 4 years. So that was kind of my takeaway here is everybody really seemed to have built win now instead of focusing on what's going to sustain them for the next 3 years, myself included. So.
We need to have a graphic when we do the oops of the draft. Like,
all right, I'll get them on it. So
oops of the draft. All right, well, that has been another fantastic mock draft for this week. Britt, thank you for coming on the show today. Please tell everyone where they can find you on the social media platforms and anywhere that you'd like to plug.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Britt_Flinn, FLINN, like on the screen. Hopefully we don't have technical issues like we had today. I will also be on the special edition of No Pun Intended on Wednesday night, talking about some really exciting upcoming new stuff. I'm not going to break it out now. I'll save it for Wednesday.
Yeah, that's the whole point
then you
of
can
Wednesday.
find some of my stuff over at Fantasy Alarm, and then follow the Lightning Round live stream on Wednesday nights and at Lightning Round Fantasy on YouTube.
That's a good segue because there is a very special episode of No Pun Intended this week because the Fantasy Appreciation Show will have a bunch of guests, including Britt, will come on the show and tell you what they're working on, where they can find their work for the upcoming fantasy season. Make sure to go to Club Fantasy FFL. There are no recent articles just yet, but we did just drop the rookie consensus rankings. Ryan, Chris, and Austin and Joel have the 1 QB and SuperFlex rankings to help with your rookie drafts. And also, we just hit 350 subs on YouTube. Yeah. All right. And to celebrate, we're giving away a signed Keenan Allen jersey on Wednesday. We're talking about Keenan Allen early in the draft today, and lo and behold, we have a Keenan Allen draft jersey we're giving away on Wednesday. So there's still time to enter. To enter and to win, just make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page for Club Fantasy. And of course, the show will be back next Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with a very special guest. Her name is Kaylin Rasmursma. She is not an analyst or an expert. She's a person that loves fantasy football and wins. She's won two championships, 2 out of the 3 championships these past 3 years. And she wants to be on the show to show her how her approach is when her mock drafts come and how to become a fantasy champion just like her as well. So
amazing.
Yeah, no. I mean, 2 out of 3. That's not too shabby for.
Well, and that's something behind the scenes. Like I said, I'm a behind the scenes guy. Evan and I had been talking about was bringing people on who you might not know from YouTube, but people who just love fantasy like the rest of us, and showing how they build their teams and hearing it from someone who you might bump into at the grocery store and just how they handle these things. I think it's a great way to handle this show. I'm very excited for it.
Awesome. So make sure to tune out with us again at 11 a.m. next Monday. Make sure to follow us on all the social media platforms at Club Fantasy FFL. For myself, Ryan, and Britt, we'll see you next week.